And this is where we are. We have a break. It has just gone in the last few kilometres. And it seems that everybody behind, judging by the suddenly slower pace we have in the peloton, is more or less happy with what has happened. We'll wait for confirmation of exactly who is there. But today is a huge day, a day where there's lots can be happening. And then we started off in Agliè, going through Parella, Samoni. You can see the Alps on the left-hand side there. First climber there, La Serra, third category GPM. Going over into Alpe Novel, the first big test of the day. There's Bielmonte, down back to Biella and up to the Sanctuary of Oropa at just over 1,000 meters. Tune on starters today, Dennis Falendert and Manuel Belletti. Lotto and Androni losing their first men of this Giro d'Italia. It means that we don't have too many teams with full complements of riders anymore. Good news for the leader, and Omega Pharma Quickstep do have a full team of riders. And of course, Omega Pharma Quickstep have a big job to do today. Sean Kelly's alongside me, and Sean, a lot of climbing today, a lot of climbing left in this Giro d'Italia, but the first day is the first real test for the leader.
Yes, well, today is a bigger day again as mountains go, and it's slowly just getting bigger and bigger. We've had some mountaintop finishes, but today is the most difficult one because the climbs are long, and when you look at the the distance, 11-kilometer climbs, it is a long one. Bielmonte, 18 kilometers, and the final climb of the day, the summit, finished 11 kilometers long. So that is going to be a big test, and the biggest test we've had. And again, we will just see slowly, who is capable of finishing in the top places of this Giro.
As you can see, a frantic start, 46 kilometres per hour. It's been slightly downhill, almost flat for the first 20-odd kilometres or so. We expected a fast start today, a big break to get into, because you feel that if the right composition goes forward, the GC guys might be happy to save their final battle towards the last two mountains today, and there's a real chance that if you're in the break, you could end up as being a stage winner. Well,
I think a lot of teams, a lot of riders thinking that way. Yesterday, we were all thinking, well, the breakaway is not going to stay away. I think reading the reports of the riders this morning as well, they never had any expectations of staying away in the end, but a winner, he said, you have to keep on trying, and that's biking. And it was an amazing final, and there's going to be riders saying, well, if the break is right, the combination is right, there's a possibility today of it going on. And it's a one which maybe different riders will want to get into the break. The guys who can climb well, who are good, strong climbers, who are a long ways off in general classification, are going to try and get into this breakaway. But we see a very hot start, and that means that a lot of riders wanted to make it into the breakaway of the day.
Well, of course, a lot of riders want to make it into the breakaway. Of course, it's a Saturday lunchtime. A lot of people watching cycling for the first time, perhaps. Sean, why wouldn't some riders be allowed into the breakaway? Could you just explain for those viewers who might have seen so much cycling before, why they might not be allowed by the leaders of the race to get ahead?
Well, general classification, man. The guys who are up there, they're a danger to the pink jersey, Rigoberto Urán. They're not going to be allowed. And the other riders who are second, third, fourth, fifth in general classification, they're going to be watching the places also. So, you go further down, a guy who is in maybe 10th or 12th place, if he gets into a breakaway and takes a lot of minutes, well, then, he could move up the classification. So we're getting to the point in the race where, the top 5 at least, if not the top 10 riders in the overall classification, are going to be watching their place here, and that's why it's difficult to get the right breakaway, the right riders that are not a danger to the general classification then.
Well, two riders from Team Sky in this breakaway. Dario Cataldo is there, Edvald Boss and Hoagland as well. Nicholas Roach has made it into the break again, we see, as has Valerio Agnoli, Paolo Longoborghini, and of course Marco Frapporti as well. Just getting all those names down for you. And of course, we'll bring you further graphical confirmation as they get a little further up the road. This is, though, the climb where we expected the break to have gone by. La Serra, it would have been an awfully difficult day for the riders, as it was if the break hadn't gone yet. La Serra with the first real climb to take on. La Serra is a category 3 climb, 7 kilometres towards the top, but a steady average gradient, around 5%. Hence the reasons people such as Alessandro Pantacchi are still riding on the front for Omega Pharma Quickstep. Hasn't got that steep yet, but today is also going to be a day for those bigger guys, a real struggle to make it inside the time limit at the end of the day. 3 minutes 30 for our breakaway of around 20 riders on the Giro d'Italia. Stage 14 today, Agliè to Oropa, and this is where the Giro really kicks uphill. Alpe Novel to be taken on later on, Bielmonte as well. It's not just the ascents, it's the descents as well. Almost 30 kilometres to descent from Bielmonte before the final kick-up to Oropa, where previous Giro d'Italia history has been written all the way back since the 1960s. Most recently, since Marzio Brusaghin won a stage in 2007. 3 minutes 33. Tough one out on the roads today. Sean, looking at this stage and looking at what's to come, this isn't the biggest day, but again, we've said before, it's not necessarily the big mountains that make the race, it's how they're raced, and if somebody decides to have a real go at it today, everybody else could be in big trouble.
Yes, well, it's all about how they race it, and if, you know, there's a, for some reason, there's a battle earlier on, Bielmonte, that climb, as we said, 18 kilometres, if they really start, you know, attacking each other for some reason, some of the men who are further off in the general classification, who were expecting probably to be in a bit of position at this moment in the race, they might try something, go for a long one, Basso, Pierre Oran and a number of other ones, and if that happens, well, then we could see the race starting much earlier, and the descents of course will be important then, because they might be chasing some of the guys who are danger classification men, but at the moment we can see it's just tempo being set by Pataki and Omega Pharma Quickstep, control situation, calm the situation, and see what the breakaway is containing up here. We have a lot of riders, of course, 20 riders. That's always a little bit more difficult. If you had a smaller group, 5-7 riders, a bit easier, of course, to contain and to control.
It's the breakaway setting their tempo. You can help set our tempo today in the commentary box, remember. We're with you all afternoon, all 135 kilometres that remain. Please remember to let us know your thoughts, what you think is going to happen in the stage, your hopes for the Giro. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling to join the conversation on Twitter. Questions to Sean and myself direct to the commentary box at RobHatchTV. There's Marco Fraporti on the front here for Androni Giocattoli. No punishment ride today from Gianni Savio. They've made sure that they have made the break. They will have been told that. Jonathan Monsalve as well, making the break, not for the first time in this Giro d'Italia. He's the man in the yellow, the Venezuelan rider. What I can see looking down, Sean, there is no blue jersey of Julian Arredondo. The man who's in the break at the minute is Danilo Hondo for Trek Factory Racing. And that'll be a big disappointment to Arredondo, unless he's hiding somewhere at the back and we haven't seen him.
Yes, well, he could be hiding. He's such a small rider. He could be in the shadow of somebody there, but we haven't been hearing anything about Arredondo being in the break. And yeah, this is a day where he could, you know, chalk up a lot of points for the King of the Mountains classification if he was in this break. But again, you know, to get away in the break for Arredondo, it's not easy. I think we can see him here in the peloton. No, it's not, say, a Garmin Sharp rider, sorry. But, yeah, to get into the breakaway, not easy for Arredondo, because when you look at the start of today's stage, you know, it was a flat section, then downhill, so very, very fast racing, and that's something that he doesn't fancy. If it went up a climb, 6 or 8 kilometres to start, well, then there'd be a big chance of being in the breakaway for Arredondo, but unfortunately it doesn't look like he's made it into the break today. So the mountain classification, we could see changes in that, because with the points available today, it's going to maybe bring more guys into the reckoning for the KOH classification at the end of the race.
Interesting that 4 teams have missed out on the breakaway. Movistar, you might expect them not to bother too much, because they're trying to help Nairo Quintana, who's been suffering from a cold and been on antibiotics for the last few days. More about his condition as the afternoon goes on. Also missing out Katusha. Well, you can sort of forgive them. They've got 6 riders here, but again, this might have been a stage where they would have hoped to get something from it. Garmin, now that's a surprise, because they're desperate for something from this Giro d'Italia. Nobody in the break from them. I'm sure they may have tried to do so. Perhaps they're planning a tactical assault on the race later on with the likes of Cardozo and Hejsdal. Also missing out Frances Desjeux, and after missing out yesterday, that will be a big disappointment to them. Of course, a huge effort to try and get Nasser Bouhanni into the sprint was suddenly laid off, and they missed out on the break yesterday. More about what happened yesterday a little later on as well. And the other team who have missed out, of course, Katusha, Garmin, Movistar and Frances de Jure. Everybody else, you'll know, represented in a couple of teams with a couple of riders there. Emanuele Sella's in there for Androni as well, alongside Marco Frapporti. Cataldo alongside Edvald Boasson-Hagen for Sky, and Lampre have two names as well, Cataneo and Polans. Three teams there who are quite well represented.
Yes, and you need to be represented when there's 20 riders in the breakaway in or about. Well, then you know, if you have two in the breakaway, it's the advantage, because it's going to be a situation. First of all, you have to ride and get the advantage sufficient that you can go into the final, and if it's the case where they take a big advantage, well, then they're going to be that tactical of playing about again and attacking each other. They're not going to stay together with 20 riders, and over a train like this, it's not going to happen. When we get into the more difficult stuff, it will be the stronger and the better climbers will stay out in front. And if you have two riders in front, Team Sky, for example, Cataldo and Boasson-Hagen, is a perfect situation.
The sprint for the mountain points already is underway. We're on our way up this third category climb of the day. An attack out of the breakaway, and Tim Wellens is going for the points. Desperate to try and get some. He was involved in the breaks very, very early on in the Giro d'Italia. Tim Wellens is the only man involved in the break from Lotto Belisol, and you can see him really sprinting out there. Well, he's going to be in the break towards the end. He's got a lot of energy to try and conserve, but he wants those King of the Mountains points. He wants something from Lotto, and Lotto are one of the teams who lost one of their players this morning. One of their big players in the team overall, really. Rider Dennis van den Dert. Maxime Montfort, 7 minutes down. It's not really going to happen for him now, so they need to look elsewhere to try and pull things off. Still Alessandro Petacchi setting the pace on the front. I can tell you that Omega Pharma Quick-Step are represented in the break today, and they're represented by Julien Vermont. Vermont, the 149, young rider from Wallonia. Chat there between Petacchi and Wout Poels. Petacchi just being told about the rhythm that is being set on this climb here. Break had almost 4 minutes. Steady ramps, as we said, around 5% towards the top the last few kilometres. Time ticks on. Of course, Frances de Jure missing out the break today, though, but they really have a job to do for Nasser Bouhanni over the next few days, don't they? Helping him get inside the time limit and helping him make sure he gets over these mountains to wear that red jersey on the final podium.
Yes, well, surprising in the break, because Bouhanni has to get over the hills, but they cannot carry him over. he has to pedal over himself. He will have teammates with him, of course, but you know, you only need so many, and there's going to be, you know, the gruppetto there, so he should be able to cling on to the gruppetto, which is the group with non-climbers who will be distant on this stage when they really start upping the pace. And you know, if you have 2 or 3 teammates, that should be sufficient. It's surprising they didn't try and, you know, put a man into the breakaway, because they have some riders who are, you know, capable of doing it, but as we see yesterday, they were riding very well, and surprisingly they stopped riding, or did they start to suffer yesterday in the end? Looking at the stage classification, they came in different groups there, but there was 2 riders still with Bouhanni in the very end. I think they just bluffed it a bit and made the mistake maybe, and probably regretted as many other teams did.
Tim Wellens then coming over, taking those 7 points, as we suggested he might do with that sprint off the front a moment ago. Danilo Honno coming over second place, the German, the veteran rider who's almost the oldest rider in the race, just a day younger than Alessandro Petacchi, and Monsalve coming over in third. Mattia Cataneo and Jan Polans are in the break for Lampre, as you can see. BMC are actually represented as well. Manuel Quinciato in the break for Cadel Evans' team, and it's going to be an interesting test for Cadel Evans today. How does he approach this last 8 stages of the Giro d'Italia? 6 of the last stages are uphill. 214 kilometres of climbing remain. We've got Plan di Monte Campione, Oropa today, Val Martello, Panarotta, Monte Grappa, Monte Zoncolan, so much more to come. Of the 1,272.8 kilometres remaining before today, 214 were serious climbing. That's 16.8% of the Giro. Cadel Evans needs to find his climbing legs, quite simply, doesn't he?
Yes, well, everybody with any ambitions of doing something in general classification are going to have need the climbing legs. There's so many montes there, it's a scary one as we go into the final week, and yeah, it's going to make, again, as always, really interesting racing here. And when you look at general classification, there's so much can happen. And as I mentioned, I think in the yesterday's coverage, I think Cadel Evans will have to try and find any opportunity to pull back some time, which he have lost a bit more than he would have expected and have hoped at this point. But you never know in stage racing. The guys who are riding well in the past number of days, the time trial, they could also start to suffer. Nobody is guaranteed they're not going to have an off day, and we'll just have to wait and see. It's all about consistency. A 3-week race, consistency every day is so important.
4 minutes and 14 seconds is the advantage of the breakaway. This is a strongish break. It's got 20 riders in it. Hasn't got too many of the best climbers in the peloton. A lot of them are saving themselves. Here's Ivan Santaromita. Santaromita was always going to try and be in the break today. He actually hails from fairly close to the finish town. It's the peloton coming over. Alessandro Petacchi on the right just slips into second wheel. Peter Serra comes to the front. And Movistar not too far behind. Final check then, 4 minutes 14 seconds. First climb is out of the way, but that was just a warm-up really. La Serra is done. We've got 2 first cats and a second cat to come. Plenty more to come on Eurosport Cycling today. Settle in, because we'll be back in a minute. You're tuning into the Giro d'Italia, stage 14. Rafael Majka leads the overall young riders standing. 58 seconds ahead of Wilco Kelderman, who's riding a fantastic race. Now, Nairo Quintana's down in third. More about him as the afternoon goes on. We'll just go to the point standings now. 251 for Nasser Bouhanni. Picked up a single point yesterday. Nizzolo got a few points as well, but still trailing by a good 26 points. Elia Viviani in third place, Ferrari and Swift. Expect that to change slightly over the next few days because there's a lot of mountains to come, but not as many points on offer for the mountain stages this year. So it's weighted towards the sprinters, but the sprinters will have to hang on for the last chance in Trieste as well at the end of next week. Julian Arredondo's missed a break today. That's a big surprise. Whether he was allowed to go was another question, whether he tried to get it as well. Diego Lisi behind on 39 points on the climbers standings. Pirazzi also missing out, another surprise, but Tim Wellens picking up a few points there, is now up into 5th place. Team by Time is still being bossed by Megaformer Quickstep. They had those excellent performances, 4 in the top 10 in the time trial the other day. And they also have the leader, remember, Rigoberto Urán. 5 minutes 32 ahead of Age de Zella Mondial. And the final classification on this Giro d'Italia that we're going to have a look at today is the Lampre Merida Prize, being won at the minute for the standing by points to Super Team Prize. Lampre up there, but the Megaformer Quickstep picking up their points for the win the other day as well. Second with 2:01. That's the bit of housekeeping out of the way. This is the breakaway. 21 riders are there. There's Nicholas Roach coming through in the break again. Agnoli, Frapporti, Battaglin, Domont, Sella, Kaiser all in the breakaway. Also for the Italians, Quinziato, Longo Borghini, Cattaneo, Wellens, who we've seen take the king of the mountains points. Polans is joined by Pantano as well. Monsalve for the Venezuelans, Santaromita, the Italian champion, Tima, Vermont, Kemeneur, Boissenhagen, Roche and Hondo, alongside Jonathan Monsalve. 21 riders in total. A big break, a good break. Is there anybody that stands out for you, Sean, as a possible stage winner and the strongest climber here?
Well, again, it's always so difficult, and in the past we have made the calculation when there's a breakaway.
Like yesterday.
Yes, well, yesterday was a real special one, of course, but we had a stage where we had Malacare, Malacarne, sorry, and out front with Weaning, and I thought he would be the little bit better in the sprint, but again it was all about how much they had left in the end, and how well you calculate when you're in the breakaway. It's all about being able to read the race well. Experience sometimes can be so important, and you would look at the better climbers here in the breakaway if they go on to the end, and Monsalve are one which we expected another day on a breakaway as well to be more strong in the end, but seemed to suffer. Santa Marita from Orica Greenedge, I think he is a good climber. When he gets into a breakaway, he should be one of the strong ones here. Nicholas Roach, hopefully that he can keep his cool and calculate a bit more, because we have seen in the breakaways he seems to go on the attack at times when it's a little bit too far out. Unless you're feeling super strong, you can afford to do that, but you have to make a calculation as well, because the other riders, you must feel how they are riding in the end and how strong, how much energy they have left. So yeah, there's a few riders who comes out here. Wellens, we can see there, he is pretty okay as well, and the way he went for the first climb, he is definitely going for the king of the hills and to mark up as much points as possible here.
Now we're on the flatter section of the stage at the minute. This we expect, Sean, to be the part of the stage where the breakaway should be allowed to work hard and get quite a bit of an advantage for themselves before the next climb.
Yes, I think when you look at the breakaway, and we can see the way Omega Pharma Quickstep are just controlling, they will just ride like that for a while, and there's no major concern with the breakaway. And this break, it's going to be just the question how much they will be allowed to pull out, and will there be some teams who want maybe to try and control the situation and keep it at a distance that they can maybe pull back in the end. This is going to be a difficult one, because with these climbs we have coming up, Bielmonte, which is a long climb, you would need, going into that, they will need a big advantage to hold on, because if they start racing back in peloton, well, 5 or 6 minutes is not going to be sufficient at all.
Well, the King of the Mountains prize is one that will be heavily fought today. Arredondo is the leader of that, as we saw a moment ago. GC Day as well, we expect. Perhaps, Sean, when we saw the route of the Giro d'Italia, we didn't expect this to be the biggest of the GC Days, but so many people have already lost so much time that they don't really want to waste any chances if there are any there today. There's going to be some racing behind, surely. Well,
again, it's going to be depending on what way the race develops as we go through the first category climb, and then we go on to the second category climb, the Bielmonte. As I said, if somebody wants to really go for it, it's difficult for an individual who's lost time in the overall classification, and he wants to go in the attack. It's a situation where you're going to be in between here. The break is going to be 6 or 8, 10 minutes up the road, and then if you go on the attack, you need the team to do that. So it's going to have to be a team effort more so than an individual one. And in the very end, well, then when we come to the final climb of the day, the 11-kilometre climb, unless you've got the legs, it's going to be so difficult. If you have lost time already, it's difficult to see where you can pull it back. But you have to try, and we see yesterday the guys who hung out there from the 6-man break with the 3 that really pushed on, they got their glory yesterday. And you have to, in cycling, you have to always try when there's an opportunity. Marco Canola tried, got his results, and he was delighted. He said the results aren't always the big important thing, it's about how you conduct yourself as a person. Yesterday first climb of the day out of the way. La Serra done and dusted. The breakaway is away. 21 riders are out there, and they have a very strong advantage, going up to around 4.5 minutes at the moment. Peloton strong out, being controlled nicely by a Omega Pharma Quickstep. This, in the meantime, is the scene at the arrival. Oh, we are going uphill. Slopes are everywhere, even on the hairstyles. It's a big gradient up to the top. Big gradient up to the top. Oropa, the scene of many big Giro moments. Enrico Battaglin on the front. Just behind him, Ivan Santaromita, Italian champion. All depends who hangs on, who comes out the best. There's really no worries about letting these guys go, says Sean. Just during the break, we were having a look at the danger men and the lack of them, really, as far as the GC is concerned, hence the reason they were let go. The closest man to the lead of Rigoberto Urán is Pantano Gomez, Colombian rider, 32 minutes and 32 seconds.
Also there, Jan Polans, 32 minutes and 34 seconds, the Lambo rider, and Nico Roach, 36 minutes. Everybody else is almost over an hour behind. No worries whatsoever for them.
Not at all. A good break considering general classification, nobody danger, and when you see 32 minutes the best man, well, they could afford almost to leave them take an hour and of an advantage for the breakaway, and then it will still come back to, you know, comfort. But they're not going to ever do that, as we can see. You know, Quick Step are controlling here, and they're doing it quite well. And I was expecting to grow it a bit more. I thought they would maybe knock it off a bit more back in peloton and allow this advantage. How far will it go out? Unless they leave it go to, you know, 12 or 14 minutes, well then it could be a situation where we could see a battle on the earlier climbs of the day. And if that's the case, well, what a great stage and what a battle it will be. But we'll wait a bit more to see as well, because in the earlier part they just allowed that breakaway to pull out very, very gradual, and it is growing, but how much is the question.
Well, this was the bottom of the stage. We said before the break that we expected them to go out, but they are pretty strong out, as you say, behind. The Megaformer Quick Step are doing most of the work, with Movistar close following behind. BMC just back in the peloton at the moment today. And as you can see, it's time for a few natural breaks before the chase really does get on, if there is going to be too much of a chase. There's going to be a lot of teams who don't have to chase, that's for certain. And of course, hence the reason why BMC are back in the peloton. They have Quinziato in the break. Two teams riding on the front, and two teams who have it on them to do the work, a Megaformer Quick Step and of course Movistar. Well, a Megaformer Quick Step and Movistar, Uran and Quintana. They're not the 1 and 2 at the minute, but they're the two riders that everybody's talking about here in Italy. Uran, fourth leader of this Giro, an historical achievement, the first Colombian Maglia Rosa. And of course, all those watching Colombia getting up even earlier this morning. 6 a.m. was the start of the stage for the Colombians. Must say hello as well to those Andre Amador fans watching all the way back in Costa Rica. We know that the newspaper reporters from Al Dia are watching. They've been up at 5 a.m. this morning to watch the start of the stage. Real dedication out there. And well, we've seen Venezuelan in the break as well. Jonathan Monsalve. It really is a South American Giro at the moment after that Aussie start we had. This is where we're headed today, up to the Sanctuary of Oropa. And can Nicholas Roach make it a happy day for Tinkoff Saxon? They had a very good day with Mick Rogers the other day. Rafael Majka, though, is the man that they're riding for on GC, and he is third at the moment. Another man who were waiting to see what he has in the mountains here. He already showed 12 months ago on the Giro, shown that he really does have the stuff to compete with the best. And if he finds it again this year, then all this talk of Uran, Quintana, Evans, we might be missing out a couple of very important guys. Not forgetting, too, the only mountain man to attack so far in this Giro, Domenico Pozzovivo.
Yes, well, I think there is riders there that are a little bit down in the general classification, and they are going to attack, but when will they attack? That is the question. And we can see here Movistar, you know, very much to the front, and the rider Amador, he's a rider who likes to go on the breakaways. We haven't seen them at all, and we haven't seen anybody really from Movistar team. So it's all for Quintana. Everybody's around him here, as we can see, full team, you know, just looking after him here, and they still have the confidence in him. And I'm not surprised, although we're hearing that he is sick, antibiotics and that. But I think when we get into the big mountains, he is going to be one of the ones who will cause a lot of problems for general classification.
Well, you mentioned it, Nairo Quintana on antibiotics, struggling to shake off an infection. He said he had a sore throat yesterday, struggling to breathe because his lungs are just feeling a bit full up, and tight chest. 3 minutes 29 down. He's been focusing so far on limiting his losses, but like we said, there's not too much time to make things up. Yes, we have 8 stages left. 6 of them go uphill. Go through the town of Gaglianico. Today could be a huge day. If you had to forecast things, though, Sean, surely whatever happens, you'd have to say that the big differences are going to be made on Monte Grappa, Monte Zancolan at the end of next week, sorry.
Yes, you would expect that, but today is going to be a concern for a lot of riders, and the ones are feeling good. And Quintana, if he is, feeling better, well, he certainly will try something on this one, because the percentage is there, the gradient is there. You get percentage on the final climb of the day, which is a serious one after 164 kilometres, and the previous climbs is all going to play on fatigue of the riders. And Pozzovivo is also one I think he will try. So if the breakaway holds on out there, they could still be a very big battle from the general classification men. But if the break is, closed down in the end, well, then you're guaranteed there will be, a big battle on the final climb of the day.
Lots to come on this Giro Stage 14. Keep your questions coming in. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling. Who do you think will win the Giro? Just a week and a day away from the finale in Trieste. We want to know. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling at Rob Hatch TV. We'll leave you as we go to a break with the images of the breakaway. Alpe Novel, 9 kilometres at 7.9%, maximum 16%. Bielmonte, 18.4 kilometres, 5.6%, maximum 13%. And Oropa, 6.2% climb, and of course, maximum of 13%. That is 11.8 kilometres long. That's what's left today. This is Nairo Quintana. Very, very happy for Rigoberto Urán. He said he's a big friend and he is Colombian. He is delighted. He said, thanks for making us dream. Real respect, real class between guys who are rivals on the road, but have enjoyed a very similar path into the peloton. Both come from very rural areas of Colombia. Urán actually 150 kilometres away from the city of Medellin, but the other side of the mountain, so it takes him about 4 hours to drive there. Back when Urán actually left what was then Kestepon and what is now Movistar and went to Sky, he moved to Monaco. And the house he vacated in Pamplona, Quintana then moved into when he moved to Europe. Big one today for Nairo Quintana, just to show he's in the race. In the meantime, the bandanas are out in tribute to Marco Pantani. 110.5 kilometres of this race remain. Sean, a few people writing in on Twitter and asking about the time difference for the sprinters. Of course, this is the first of our big mountain stages. Could you explain to everybody at home how those time differences are worked out, and who says and who decides who's going to be disqualified and not?
Well, it's the commissaires who decide, and of course there's a time limit schedule there. The mountain stages, of course, the time scale is much greater. I have to check in the regulation book, but it's probably 25% today, because of it being a mountain stage. It's not the big mountain stage, but and then the average which they do over the stage as well, if they go at 32 or 34 or 40 or whatever, it's worked out on that. So it is a calculation which it takes a bit of working out, and you cannot make it out beforehand, although you can forecast it. And today, of course, we will be saying that Breakaway will get away and the average will be so much, but with 21 riders out in front, this average is going to be faster than we maybe would expect if there was a break of 5 or 6 riders. So we'll have to see as we go into the stage, probably the halfway point, and that's what the teams do as well. You have team car 1, team car 2, and team car 2 will stay with the gruppetto, the bus, the non-climbers and the sprinters, and they will be they'll take times on what way the front group is going and what the average speed is, and they will be able to work that out, and then they will relay that to the riders who are in this gruppetto. And sometimes they have to start upping their pace and start pushing on much earlier than they would do, but they calculate it out on the road, and then they decide how hard they have to go. And on the climb itself, the run sprinters, they make a steadier pace. They try and keep everybody together if there's a group of 40-50 riders, and then on the downhill they go down quite fast as the front group actually, and maybe faster sometimes. And in the flat as well, they really push it on, so they do not lose time. So they just allow to lose time on the climbs, which the climbers always do, and then try and make it inside the time limit. But again today we can see here, the first climb, I think everybody got over pretty well, so it's going to go a long ways into the stage. And when you get into that point when there's about 85 kilometres into the stage, well then you're pretty safe if you really make the calculation good and keep working at it. Unless somebody is really suffering injury, sickness, they should not be a problem today.
Through the town of Biella. The stage actually centres around Biella today. Final climb will leave here. We go through 2 or 3 times, in fact, the city of Biella, right at the foot of the Alps on the way into France and Switzerland. In Piedmont today, northwestern Italy. Next week they head to the Dolomites and heading basically east all the way to Trieste, the town that was once a frontier between the east and the west for so many years, and the years of the Cold War. Pitacchi again at the front. Big job to do at the moment today for him. Imagine, as Sean was explaining, how the stage is going to go for the bigger guys. He's going to have a lot of work to do at the start of the day. And you talked about descending as well, Sean. The descent from Bielmonte is so long today. It's almost 30 kilometres down. So there's a lot of time to be made up by those bigger guys. And if that's the case, then hopefully they won't have too many problems today.
Yes, well, again, if the peloton of big favourites are not really racing aggressively on that ascent, then the Gruppetto can, you know, make up a lot of time there, and they will always push on the descents. That's what they do, and it will all depend at that point. 122 kilometres into the stage at the top of the climb Bielmonte, they will, you know, be making the calculation how much they're behind the leading group on the road, and then of course immediately, if they are getting a little bit into the red zone, well, they will push on big time. If not, well, then they will just go down this descent at a pretty normal pace and go on to the final climb of the day. So you know, it's all about the calculation out there on the road, and you have to see what's happening up front.
Wheeler down on Biella. Chance to show itself off to the world today. .6.2 kilometres to go. Oran leads this Giro. The minute we have the breakaway being led by Paolo Longoborghini of Cannondale on the front of the green. Everybody's coming through and doing very good turns at the minute, and the advantage still continues to creep up. Lotto there with Tim Wellens, who won the first climb of the day, the man in red. Nicholas Roach, the Irish rider, riding for Tinkoff Saxo. Just behind him, Axel Daumont of Agliè de Serra Mondiale, Roach's former team. And here's the leader of Agliè de Serra Mondiale, Mr. Pozzovivo. Piccolo Pozzovivo, I think we should call him, after he couldn't find a time trial bike big enough for him the other day. He's been excellent, though, so far in this Giro d'Italia, as has his team. BMC with Manuel Quinziato. Done a good job for Cadel Evans so far. And Danilo Hondo. Quinziato and Hondo, two of the more respected and well-known men in the peloton. In fact, they'll be selling tickets for the Autobus and the Gruppetto at the back if they won in the break. Talking of breaks, we're going to go off for one now. 105.3 kilometres to go on the Giro. Bad news to bring you, I'm afraid. There's just been a big crash in the peloton. Problems with road furniture, and this is what happened. Quite close to the front of the group. A lot of riders down. Konstantin Svitsov for Sky, alongside Sebastian Hanau and Bernie Eisel. Yujika Arashiro looked to be the worst affected, but he's now back on his bike, thankfully. He's actually going to change a bike on the live pictures we're seeing as well. And Jussi Vaikkonen, Finnish champion, also quite heavily affected for Française des Jeux. Another silly crash, another one involving road furniture, and one that we could have really done without on this Giro d'Italia. A lot of Sky riders hanging on because their main man, Konstantin Svitsov, was the worst affected of that team. Thomas Dekker there as well, a few Neri Sottoli riders down. Matteo Rabottini being one of them, hence most of his teammates waiting to try and assist him. So if we had enough nerves today, well, we've just seen some more. It's been bizarre how much this has actually happened this week, Sean. Yes, Grand Tours are nervous. Yes, the first week and a half tends to be so, but we've got enough on our plates today, and they just can't seem to stay off the ground in this Giro.
No, it seems to be just every day we have just crashes, and we can see here they were, you know, coming out of the corner. It looked like some of the riders slided off. I don't think it was a street force that really caused it. Looked like that either they just touched together, got tangled together, or somebody started to slide a bit. The nearest Soti rider, I think he could have slided, and that caused panic, of course. And when you have, you know, the panic in the corner like that, everybody goes to brakes, and suddenly they start, you know, banging into each other, and you have 10 riders down in a flash.
Enrico Battaglin at the front here, chased down by Marco Frapporti and Emanuele Sella. 101.1 kilometres to go. Plenty of people out on the sides of the roads. Weekend again. Not good to hear about the crash behind. At the moment, everybody back on their bike, but a couple of riders look particularly affected. I know that Yukiya Arashiro, the Japanese champion, was doing his best to try and get going. Intermediate sprint time for the day at Cossato. Battaglin had tried to get out, but it's Longo Borghini who goes to take the points. Right at the base at one of the climbs coming through Biella. Climb up the main street. Quick step, we're just about out of the way when the crash happened, by the way. They've been doing their riding on the front. It's a Tonavillo case at the moment. So when do you get the next gap for the breakaway? Had gone up to around 5 minutes. A few of you asking about the weather forecast. It is forecast partly cloudy today. We've seen several sunny spells. We've got good temperatures. And at the moment, there's no precipitation. We'd like it to stay that way. Dario Cataldo on the front. He could be a man to watch today. Sky have had an awful Giro d'Italia. Pretty poor. Stage win would remedy that somewhat. Of course, their main focus is on the Tour de France. It's a funny one with Sky, Sean, because with such a big squad and such a high budget, you'd certainly expect them to be able to concentrate on each and every one and the Grand Tours and give them the respect they deserve.
Yes, well, that was the plan. But it doesn't always go to plan, of course, in cycling, because riders, for some reason, they get a bit sick in the beginning of the year, and then their programme and their preparation is totally, messed about. And Richie Porte, of course, was for Sky down to do this Giro, and that would have changed everything if Richie Porte was riding like he was last year, which he hasn't been this year because of illness. So it's within Sky, and not the only one. They've had a few problems with their riders being sick and accidents, and they have had a difficult start of season, not as smooth as in the past years. And we can see Christopher Froome as well, a little bit of difficulty, a back problem in the early part of the season. He has come good Tour of Romandie. He seems to be back to his form once again. But yes, for Sky, the expectations are always big when you have a team that with so many big names and so many strong riders. Well, if you're missing your main general classification man, you're still expected to put up a performance, and for Sky, a stage victory here would solve a lot of their problems.
It'd certainly take the pressure off the team. Nasser Bouhanni right at the front here. Frances Deschamps with a couple of riders just after the Omega Pharma quick step train, again keeping him out of trouble, keeping him nice and safe. He's got a big job to do to get that red jersey to Trieste next week, and then fend off any final challenges for it, remember. Arredondo in there in his blue jersey, just on the wheels of Robert Kieselowski, the Croatian champion. The clock ticking at the bottom. The last time check we heard was up to 6 minutes now. We'll get the official check once they come through the intermediate sprint. Ivan Santaromita. And the pace has been fairly decent behind. It suggests that this big group is working really well together, Sean.
Yes, they are working very well and riding very strong. We've seen here, the riders on the front are really pushing it on, and still with 98 kilometres to go, it's going to be interesting. And the advantage we will see now, if it's still growing or if it's going to come down from here on. This is the point where it should be stabilising, and if it is, as you said, well over 6 minutes the last time, but I think with the accident we see a slowdown there, and it could increase a bit more, but again it's not increasing anything which it could be. Omega Pharma Quickstep are setting, you know, quite a nice pace in the front and just limiting the advantage that this 21-man group can pull out here, and it will all depend then when you go into the next climbs. If there is a controlled pace set there, they will hold that advantage, and if they get to the climb of Bielmonte and they get onto the descent there with that 6 or 7 minutes, well, there has to be somebody in the breakaway of 21 who can hold out in the end.
Michele Scarponi up the front of the race. It's rare to see in this Giro d'Italia. Hasn't been too close to the front so far. There are Europe car riding for Pierre Rolland. Big day for him, really. 5 minutes 45 back. A big weekend for him. You feel that you'd have to get some sort of time back before the rest day to be considered a bit of a contender for the podium again.
Well, I think we've seen already in this race, Pierre Rolland, he goes in the attack, and he's not afraid to try it from a long ways out, and he's done it, in the Tour of France, and that's his style of racing. So again today, we could see him having a go, but will the opportunity present itself? If there's a lot of riders with their team leaders here, well, then it's such a difficult one. You really have to wait until the big favourites are pretty much isolated, and that is the opportunity for Rolland. So he'll have to wait and see what happens today, but there will be a lot of opportunities in this race, because with the difficulty of it, there's going to be many times where the big favourites are going to be alone out there, and that's the time where Pierre Rolland, because he is far enough up in general classification, they're not going to react immediately, and he could pull back in a bit of time, and he needs to do that because he's lost a lot to do anything in the general classification worth talking about at the moment. So his tactic is just go in the attack.
Same with Ivan Basso, who's going to have to do something and stay with the best on the mountains. It's more than 6 minutes at the moment, and again that crash just affecting things. Nasser Bouhanni still very, very close to the front here. A couple of Française des Jeux teammates coming up and making their way up to the front of the peloton to help him. Fantastic mountain stage forecast for today. Playing the waiting game until the first big climb of the day comes. Just the build up to it here. 6 minutes 38 continues to tick by, as you can see that advantage. But perhaps we expected it to be a little longer. Well, race radio telling us 8 minutes and 10 seconds, a bit more like what we expected it perhaps to be, or even bigger at this point, certainly given that there's nobody of any great danger up here at the front. But as Sean mentioned, Omega Pharma Quickstep setting a very, very strong pace. Certainly given the fact that there's a breakaway out there in front that isn't really threatening. They're riding for the man who spent 2 years living very close to here in Lake Garda, Rigoberto Urán, before making Pamplona's European base. Then he moved to Monaco and still prefers to spend a lot of his time training at home in Colombia, though, with his family. And the fastest time schedule at the moment on stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia. The gap has gone down to, I should say, gone up, pardon me, to 8.5 minutes. I'm not used to seeing these gaps go up on our screens live. So the chase is on by the time we come to you. 21 riders out there, and of course they're riding at a great pace out here. A big group of 21 really does help each other, certainly when they get organised. And the thing is, we saw the whole peloton stretched out behind, so you got a suggestion, visible suggestion anyway, as to how they were riding behind. And Sean, you and I have just looked at the time schedule. Faster than the fastest one so far. It's been a lightning start.
Yes, it has been a lightning start, and it's just continuing. With the breakaway being so big, it just helps so much, and everybody contributing in this 21-man group, and you can see the peloton here being pulled along by Omega Pharma Quickstep. The pace is very fast as well, because quite a line. The top 40 riders, they're lined out quite well. Then it groups up a bit, but that tells us that, yeah, they're pushing on all the time. And with a 21-man group up front, that is going to be, you know, a little bit more difficult. You have going to have to ride a bit strong on the front, and we see there Omega Pharma Quickstep using the men who are not going to be there later in the day. Particularly, we see they're doing a lot of the work on the front, and of course, you know, when it comes to the bigger climbs later here, he's going to, you know, get into a group behind and not be able to stay with his pink jersey man, and you know, they have it calculated in that way, which is the normal thing we would see from the team.
Colombia very much involved in this Giro d'Italia. Talked about the legions of supporters watching. Edvald Boasson Hagen last week was in the break on his birthday and Norway Day. Didn't quite work out for him. There you go, average race speed 44.9 kilometres per hour. Considering we've had already a third category climb, that is pretty fast. Pierrick Kemeneur is going to be racking up the breakaway kilometres. We must remind you though, it won't count today for the Fuga Pinarello prize, the breakaway prize. Anybody who is in a break of 11 or more doesn't have that break count towards the prize. Too much help is considered to be had here. That's not even Santa Romita who's out in your picture. This is Martin Kaiser. Belkin, one of those teams who really needs to try and get something out of the Giro. They do have Wilco Kelderman up there. News is from Holland apparently breaking at the moment that the second stage of the 2015 Tour de France has been decided, and it will be in Middelburg, where we had the Giro a few years ago. Race will start, of course, from Utrecht. Seems to have slightly settled down behind. Still a few riders fairly strong out though. And this is the pace that Sean was talking about a minute ago. Omega Pharma Quickstep with all the big guys that they have in their team. And if they've got them, why not use them? Rest day coming up on Monday, and then it'll be the time the Giro and the big guys will really not want to look at the profile in the morning. They'll be getting up, and I think first words of the day will be a few curse and swear words, won't they, Sean?
Yes, well, there will be a lot of concerned riders on many occasions when they wake up in the morning. You look at the route manual, and of course there's a number of things as well. The weather conditions, hopefully, you know, the weather will be good, because we're getting into the high mountains, and if the weather is not kind to the riders, well, then it just gets so much more challenging, so much more difficult. And if you're suffering a bit, of course, you know, the cold conditions, the wet conditions, it makes it so much more difficult on the body and to survive in the race. Where if you get nice conditions, well, then you hang in there and you try and get into the bus and on the mountain stages and get through. And when you get into the last week of the race, everybody's thinking about getting the finish there. Nobody wants to go out unless you're totally empty, or if you're injured, badly injured, and you're suffering too much. But when you get into the final week, everybody wants to go on and finish out the race.
Well, it's interesting. That's something to ask you as well, actually, from a personal achievement point of view. At most of the Grand Tours you were in, Sean, you're at the pointy end, you're at the competitive end, but obviously sometimes you turn up, it doesn't go for you. Is there a sense of personal satisfaction by finishing a tour like that, just getting through, getting round? Is there a real good positive sense at the end of it?
Yeah, there's a very good feeling when you get to the end. Of course, the sprinters, you know, they make a calculation before ever they go to the race, and they're going to ride for so many days, it's 10 or 15 days, and then they get out, and that's part of the preparation for another race. And the Tour of France, of course, will be the one, because if you go too deep, well, then the sprinters, they suffer so much, and they have to dig in so much to get through the race. But there's so many other riders, like the domestiques and the helpers in the teams, they want to get through and they want to finish the race. And when you're struggling for some reason, form is not as good, maybe in the third week you're starting to fatigue for some reason, you're injured because of all the crashes, you just try and struggle through. And when you get to the end, the feeling to finish the race, it's a great feeling to get through a big 3-week tour. And for the riders who also may be breaking into a 3-week tour, that is more important for those guys, to be able to get through that marathon of an event.
Well, it's the never-ending trophy, Trofeo Senza Fine, the Giro trophy, and for some it will feel like the never-ending race, I think. Extra day this year, given the extra rest day as well. It's almost a month-long event. Tim Wellens at the back. Some local delicacies being tucked into those mounted cured meats along the side of the road. It's a real day out at this time of the year. Weather's starting to turn nice. Beautiful views and, of course, some extremely competitive action. Rigoberto Urán, man in charge of the Maglia Rosa. It's been such an historical couple of days for Colombian cycling for him. 27 years of age. We said yesterday that he's reaching the age of cycling maturity. He said for the first time this week, I am here to win the Giro. He's not scared of any of the climbs. He's an extremely confident young man. He's had so much adversity to overcome in his life so far. And that awful, awful news when he found out that his father had been gunned down by paramilitaries during a very, very dark period of Colombia's history. Had to deal with loss, pain, but had also been taught to work and overcome the obstacles, which in cycling is a very, very important quality to have. Ability to suffer and get through. 88.6 kilometres still to suffer through for these guys if they want to hold on for a stage win from the breakaway. Gap up to 10 minutes and 36 seconds. Finally, some settling down of things. Tim Wellens out the back here of the breakaway, of course. It's lunchtime for them. Nicholas Roach as well. Feed zone for the breakaway. Tim Wellens takes his musette, but loses a bottle and a bidon at the same time. It's a skill in itself, isn't it, Sean? Holding on to your lunch.
Well, you need to hold on to the lunch today with the breakaway out here from very early and, you know, pushing on big time, and you know, the calorie burn will be big, and sometimes if the musette is not closed, and I think that was the problem there, it probably wasn't buttoned up, and he loses a bit. But when you're in the breakaway, of course, you have, you know, team car number 2 which move up with the brakes, and you can just call the car there and, you know, get some refreshment, so it's not going to be a problem. If you're in the big mountains and you have a climb and then you make a descent and maybe a very short little bit in the valley and then you start climbing again, that could be a problem, because if you're in the peloton, it's not as easy. It's not. You can go back to the car, but to go back, imagine going back, you know, from the front end of the peloton here to the very end, and then to move up again. If you're going on to a big climb, the race will be pushing on big time, and that's where it is danger. But for Wellens there, it's not going to be a problem at the moment with the breakaway and the service car behind very close.
10 minutes and 17 seconds as Vega Farmer quick step with Kaiser and Petacchi work hard at the front. Frances this year, the second team committed. 85.8 kilometres to go. We await the arrival of the second climb of the day, the Alpe Novel. Category 1 climb that's 9 kilometres long, extremely steep. Actually, a 4-kilometre section with an average, yes, average gradient of 12%. So GC riders, well, will they start attacking each other early? Probably not, but if they do, there'll be absolute fireworks. Certainly with this gap as it is, there's no need for that to happen. We'll be interested to see what happens in the breakaway. Anybody who doesn't quite have the legs will be weeded out pretty soon on. The minute's still a morning break. Lunch is just down the road, though. 8 minutes or so away. She said that's something to look forward to for the big guys who've done their work, and then it's survival after that when the climb stop. The gap goes below 10 minutes. Frances this year, again, perhaps surprising to some that they're riding so close to the front here. Their best placed man on GC is Alexander Geniet. Nothing for Boani today, but they're helping set the pace. This is Manuel Quinziato, a man who's set the pace for most of the day so far. For most of the Giro so far, as he hides his gel in the pocket. 178, there's Albert Timer as well. 191, Dario Cataldo. Mattia Cataneo. Longo Borghini goes past as well. Fraporti and Sella are the riders for Androni Giocattoli. Interesting for those teams who have more than one rider, Sean. What's the tactical approach in the breakaway when you've got more than one rider? Do you concentrate everything on one guy who feels the best and let the other burn out, or is it a case of wait and see what happens?
Very much a wait and see. First of all, you have to wait and see what the advantage is at a point when you can make the calculation. It's possible to go all the way to the finish, and then of course they start talking, the two riders from the team, how are you feeling, and then you have to wait and see, do you go on the attack or do you wait for somebody else to attack? And if you have two good climbers, or of course two strong riders, well then with the route the way it is today, you should be able to survive a long time and maybe get on to the final climb of the day with two riders in the front. But that can all change, and the other teams, the other riders as well, can change your tactic very, very quickly. In the matter of kilometres, it can totally change because somebody attacks from a long ways out when you're saying that, and you're expecting nobody to attack that is going to continue on with 21 men, except the ones that are really struggling on the climb and they can't follow a pace being set. And then you see how you're feeling in the end, of course, and if you have to make the calculation against the other riders also, how good they are, and if they're real good climbers in the group, you have to maybe go and attack yourself from a longer way out.
So Domenico Pozzovivo, one of the big guys who's expected a challenge over the next week. What's he think about today, though? Luckily, we managed to catch up with him at the start. Domenico, stage for you today? Yeah, it's a very hard stage. Two climbs before the final are also very tough, I think. But think maybe that I'll have a go on the last one. Short but sweet and straight to the point there from Domenico Pozzovivo. He's not messing about. Maybe a case of saving even all the vocal energy there, Sean, because he's going to need it all today, isn't he?
Yes, well, maybe go on the attack. It's a one word to wait and see, because there's so much in that. And I think if he has the form and he feels that he can do damage, this final climb is going to be an opportunity for him, because the percentage is there, and with the two previous climbs as well, hopefully he will go on the attack, because that's what we need in the end of the stage today for our viewers, for some of the favourites to really start attacking on this final climb. No matter what the positions out front, we could have a race out front for the stage, but we need action in the peloton as well from the big favourites.
Colombian fans there, and they're present all the way through this Giro, as is the Pink Brigade. They've been everywhere. Conversations at the front as to how they can keep this going. Kaiser and Pataki in charge of doing that at the minute, gesturing of, well, that's going to happen soon, we're going uphill. Time for those guys to burn themselves out, and they'll take them on to the start of the climb. But again, first category climb coming up, their job will be done very quickly, won't it? Well,
normally when the percentage starts to go up, that's going to be the problem for Elio Case and Pataki, which we see on the front of the bunch having a discussion there. If the gradient wasn't as big, well then they could see them going quite a bit up the climb. But I think they are the ones who have been doing, for the earlier parts of the stage, they've been doing the big share of the work, and that is the plan, that they do as much as possible, because they know on this climb that they will have problems staying with the main peloton.
A few riders going back to the car before this big climb begins, and the feed zone for the peloton approaching as well. Everybody fairly bunched up, and pace for the first time has been knocked off a bit. 82.5 k's to go. We're going to do our best to get another commercial break out of the way before the real action starts. The fireworks begin. It's going to be a spectacular day here on the Giro d'Italia. Look at the stage passed by the breakaway. The gap has gone down to below 10 minutes. 10.5 minutes was the maximum of the day. There's Valerio Agnoli passing onto your screen. Axel Domon, the very young climber of Agliè. fact, the only man left in the Ascent Desert team that is under 25. Emanuele Serra there. Now, Sean, this is a man we haven't seen on our screens too much in recent years since he had his well-publicised problems, and hasn't really come back the same rider, but by his natural characteristics is a guy that should like today.
Yes, well, we've seen quite a bit of him in this Giro, but on the very end of the peloton.
That's the wrong end.
He's been there a lot, and but to be in the breakaway today, you know, there's riders maybe just following the race, not concerned about losing time. If the peloton splits in the final 30-50 kilometres of the race, they don't give out concern about that, and get into the stages where there's, you know, a number of mountains to be climbed. And of course, Serra, we've seen him in the past, he's a good climber. It'll be interesting to today, will he be able to produce something out of this break if it does go all the way? And you would have to put him in there with the guys that are up here, but there is many other candidates, you know, that are going to be very competitive in the end of this stage. Agnoli, as we see there, another one who had a lot of difficulty in this race, crashes and you know, all sorts of bad luck really, and he is the one, I think, in the end of this stage as well, who we have to look at. But we have to wait a little bit more, because we're just through the halfway point, and as we see, the gap is coming down. If for some reason somebody, you know, really starts to light the race back in the peloton, well, then this advantage will come down very quickly. But if it goes to the end, there is a lot of names in there with, and you know, that I would put down as a possible winner of the stage.
Well, Agnoli, I think, will be an extremely popular winner, a bit like Paolo Tiralongo was a few years ago when he was gifted a stage win by Alberto Contador in thanks for all of the excellent work he'd done on him in general classification fights in the past. There's Fran Ventoso, slightly looking less like a mummy as the day goes by, with a few less bandages on. His entire left side mummified for the start of this Giro d'Italia. He's done a great job to stay on his bike, keep giving out the orders and keep doing the big riding for Nairo Quintana. It's funny, Movistar haven't lost a single rider yet, but a lot of their riders still convalescent from their various aches and pains and problems. Seen Adriano Malori the other day in that, I want to say, impressive image, because it was something that really did impress upon you, but not impressive in a positive sense. It was more like a shocking image, really, of the crash that he was in. We've seen Chris Anker Sorensen since leave the race. He's been operated on, and he actually says he couldn't remember 25 kilometres after that crash the other day. We didn't see it on our screens, but the images were pretty strong after that. Ventoso on the front, chasing down these guys, 9 minutes and 40 seconds, and this is where the climb really does start to begin. Alpe Novel coming up, first category climb on the Giro d'Italia, 8.9 kilometres, all the way up to 1,099 metres. It's climbing 711 metres, and you can see that maximum slope, 16%, an average at just below 8%. What type of climb is this, Sean?
Well, it's going to be a difficult one, unless they, you know, really just keep on making a tempo here. But if they start pushing on, and there's surely somebody in here who want to, you know, push on a bit more and see who is the strong ones in this 21-man breakaway, and that will see the problem for the non-climbers, the weaker ones, having difficulty. As we see Daniel Hondo here, he is riding real strong in this race. We see the other day he was up there in the time trial, a difficult time trial as well for a guy like him who was, you know, a sprinter in the past and a lead-out man of more recent years. And to get into this break today, that says that he is, you know, in good shape. But unfortunately, I think the final, this one's going to be too difficult for him. But again, it all depends how they will attack the climb. Will they really start pushing on each other at this point, or will they wait for much later? I think they will start waiting for later, but there'll be surely some guys who will start getting into difficulty on this difficult one.
Today this is a real high mountain stage. How do you feel? What do you expect?
Yeah, it's a really hard stage for, of course, with the steep climbs. I expect a really hard race from the beginning, with already a little climb in the beginning. Yeah, I hope to do a really good stage. The legs feel really good still, and we'll see on the end what the real result will be.
It's an old cliche, but we're 2 weeks in, and in a sense, another Giro starts today.
Yeah, of course. They're really hard. Last week is beginning now, and yeah, we'll see.
Well, we talked about this backloaded Giro d'Italia. Again, the cliches are rolled back. The Giro starts here, and it's funny, Enrico Gasparotto actually tweeted this morning. He said, don't tell that to all the mechanics who've been working for a month, all the kitchen staff, all the other riders, the sprinters, the lead-out men. They're just different types of race, aren't they? Different periods in the race.
Yes, different periods, and I think for different riders as well, where different style of riders will shine, but you have to consider all what has been done in this race. For everybody has to start pedaling from the first day back in Belfast, and you have to take that into consideration, the accumulation of fatigue, injuries and all of that. But for the overall and the general classification, for the big men here who are looking at general classification, top 5, top 10, well then it's a turn of the page really. The style of a stage and the grading of the climbs we're going into today.
Ivan Santaromita at the front, close to home, and after 2 hours of riding has been riding at an average of 0.457 kilometres per hour. Pantano Gomez comes to the front for Team Colombia. Evo Boasson-Hagen on the left-hand side, and in the light blue of the Kazakhstani team Astana, jersey unzipped, climbing as he always does, heart monitor visible, it is Valerio Agnoli. Sun is still out, which is very good news as we're on our first serious climb of the day. We're off for a quick break. We'll see you in a minute. Keep it Eurosport Cycling. Gap is down to just over 9 minutes with 75.9 kilometres to go. If you're tuning in late to this stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia, where have you been? We've been here for a while now. Lots to come, though. Big meaty plate of the day is just about beginning. As Valerio Agnoli, he's part of a 21-man breakaway today. Men up there are Agnoli, Domont, Fraporti, Sella, Battaglin, Kaiser, Quinziato, Wellens, Polantz, Cataneo, Pantano Gomez, Longo Borghini, Monsalve, Santaromita, Kemeneur, Tima, Hondo, Roche, Boasson-Hagen and Cataldo. Yes, 21 names and only a handful of teams to miss out. Movistar don't have representation, neither do Omega Pharma Quickstep, nor Katusha or Garmin Sharp. Here's Marco Fraporti in the meantime. Androni made sure they did get the break today. They sent 2 riders up there. Peloton behind, by the way, are just about to begin the climb, hence the time difference coming down at the minute. Still a Mega Pharma Quickstep who've put a good pace on the front here. Now they're about to start this climb, Sean, and every time we talk about a bike race, we always get questions about gear ratios. People who like riding at the weekends, who've maybe been out on the club run this morning, been riding their own gear ratios, comparing themselves to the pros. If you're a top
rider here and a top climber, what gear ratios are you looking at these first category climbs today? Well, I think from a climbing gear, I think 39, probably 28. And then you have the 53, 54 outside ring and 11 sprocket. It's all about the gearing for the climbing. That's what you need. You need to have a low enough gear. But again, with the ratios they have got now, 11 speeds, they have a huge ratio, and it's not like when you go back 15, 20 years ago.
Not like it was in my day.
when you had to start changing sprockets, and the mechanics had so much work, because on the medium mountain stages and the flat stages you would not need a lower gear, and you did not have the ratio. You had 7 or 8 speeds, 7 or 8 sprockets, let's say, and then the mechanics had to start changing and put on these 22, 24 sprockets. That is not a problem now. You can almost go most of the way through the Giro, except on the real mountain stages, the real steep ones, where we see some guys using compact. But I think 39, 28 will be probably the lowest them guys will need today. But for the normal tourist, if you have to go up those climbs, you certainly need a triple, or otherwise you need a 30, 32 rear with a 39. That'd be the minimum you could make it up those climbs. But we see the professionals and the riders who race every day, the way they can go up those climbs on a much higher gear than the normal Sunday cyclist.
It's all about the tactics today. Where do you place your pieces? When do you place them? When do you make your move? It's all coming up. 74.8 Ks to go, 8:46 at the minute. into Crevacuore. Right at the base of this climb to Alpe Novel, Category 1 climb. First of 2 Category 1 climbs today. We have a second cat coming up as well. Of course, a second cat that perhaps if it was a little shorter might be a first category in terms of the amount of distance it has to go up. It's interesting how they classify the climb, Sean. It's again something we're always asked about. Could you clarify for those who might be watching cycling again for the first time at this weekend and having a look at the Giro and seeing what it's all about, with the craze certainly going over in Ireland where we were the other week and the United Kingdom. Could you tell them how they classify those climbs?
Well, of course, in the earlier days it was the categories was classified by a car, and you know, it's depending on what gear the car would go up, and if you had to go down to 4th gear in your car, that was classified as a 4th category climb, and then if the car didn't make it, it was made outside category, and that still stands, which is an amazing. But you know, sometimes you question so much the category is given to a climb, because certainly, you know, climbs maybe merit more of a category or less, and the mountaintop finishes as well, you know, some of them are not really that steep, but they get a category which is, you know, well overrated. But I think it all depends what they pay to the organisers to get the race finish here. And if you say to the organisers, well, we want to have it a 4th category, and it's really not meriting that, they will give it to you, because there's the financial, and each town finish, they have to pay for those races, and most of the starts as well, is what I believe. In the Tour of France, certainly, you know, the start town, the finish town, they all have to pay a fee to get the event, and there's a long waiting list to get a finish, certainly, of a stage of the Tour of France. Tour of Italy, I would reckon, is the same. So it depends on where you are, and if you're in the end, if you're a finish of a stage, well, then you could be given a 4th category where the climb might not merit it. But again, as we said, in bike racing, it all depends how you race it. In the end, if there's a hilltop finish, a mountaintop finish, it doesn't have to be that real steep. If they really race, you know, full on, well, then it can cause a lot of selection and make great, interesting racing.
Great, interesting racing. We talked about Danilo Hondo before. He's on the Alpe Novel. This is where we're headed. The hardest point there you can see just before half point, and they're at it now, 16%. Be nice to go and see the breakaway and see how they're getting on. This is Danilo Hondo. He's riding a 34.28 today. And he is the man who's starting to struggle first. We said he was looking better on the climbs. He seems to have lost quite a bit of weight, because obviously he's still a big guy. He's always been a naturally big guy, but it's not that boring, come on.
The race is coming.
It's starting now. It's going to miss it all. Man at the front, Frapporti, really grinding them through, and you can tell that this is hurting at the minute, Sean.
Yes, and some hurting more. We could see Daniel Hondo there just setting the pace on, setting his own pace on the rear, losing a bit of ground. But you know, sometimes the non-climbers do that. They just get settled into a climb, and when it comes to a steep section, you lose a little bit, and then it eases off a bit, and you can get back into the group again. And they're just you know, tapping away at it in the front group of 21 riders here. It will be interesting to see, will there somebody go in the attack. And I think at the GPM point we did see the man Tim Wellens from Lotto Belisol. He really hit it on the previous climb, so he's going to have a go again here. Will he hit it as early and as hard? I doubt it on this one, because the percentage is much steeper, but he is really looking for maximum points here. And will he be capable of getting it on this 1st category climb? We'll have to wait and see.
This is where we are. The big stuff, the meaty stuff, is yet to come. It's the back of the main group on the road. This is the front of all those making their way to the front now. So everybody unzipping their jerseys. Warmer temperatures today. Axel Daumont, he's one of the more naturally gifted climbers in this group. Young Frenchman who he's waiting for his first big result. Beppu and Patrick Gretsch having a chat there on your screen. Ventoso, the man still bandaged up on the right-hand side. Quintana being well looked after, as is Uran. He's in the pink jersey unzipped. Just behind him, Thomas Dekker, with those locks behind him flowing out from underneath the helmet. It's a classy picnic. 8:30. Monsalve on the right-hand side on the pedals. Halfway through the climb. This is the hardest part, remember. Axel Dumont onto the pedals himself. Again, even the guys who are considered top climbers are here, at the very least, sweating a bit. 8:27 is the gap. Jerseys unzipped. Trying to keep that rhythm that will keep them happy-ish on the climbs. 21 in the break. Front of the race with 73.5 kilometres to go. Just over halfway through the first big climb of the day. That's the Alpe Novel, Category 1 climb, 9 kilometres long, very steep indeed. And we're on the section of around 4 kilometres, where the average gradient is 12% here. No big attacks yet from behind, and we didn't expect that. This section of the race, Sean, all about seeing how much of a gap that the Breakaway can hold out here at the top.
Yes, well, I think 8:27 the advantage, and we can see the distance, 73 kilometres, a lot of difficult terrain, and a long ways to the finish. And it's the AG2 All-Mondial rider Axel Dumont, who was, one of the young riders. I think he's quite nervous being up here in this breakaway and getting maybe a little bit overexcited, pushing on the pace here on the front, and that's not what you want to do. If you can just sit back in the group there and follow, it would be better. But again, he's probably a bit over anxious finding himself out here in the breakaway. Hopefully he doesn't do too much, but on the climb, it doesn't mean a lot if you're riding on the front or you're sitting in the group. The drafting it, not like on the flat when you have huge benefits, 15 maybe 20% when you're going really flat out on the flat section. Here in the climb it doesn't have as much as an advantage. So but 8:30 we can see Quick Step are still the ones setting on the pace, and will we see somebody going in the attack here? Pataki still here, which is surprising after they've been up quite a lot of this climb in the steep sections. He is climbing better than he is sprinting in this race.
Well, narrowish road, a couple of riders just getting in the way of each other. There's a Japanese champion's jersey of Arashiro right at the back. We've seen the Breakaway just to get onto those steeper sections. Peloton are yet to hit the massive 16% section yet, hence the reason I think we still saw Pataki and Kaiser up there. Hat off to them if they can stand and stay up the front and continue setting the pace on those sections. 8 minutes and 28. The gap is staying stable at the moment, because we saw young Axel Dumont at the front a minute ago, and have to remember that he's still coming back to competition. He only returned from hand surgery that he had in the spring at the Tour de Romandie. Well, they stopped them in pink young here. This was the little coming together of riders a minute ago, and it can happen perhaps when the pace isn't high enough.
Yes, and we can see that just going over a bridge here, it probably just tightens up a little bit of a slowdown. We can see some of the riders coming to a standstill, putting their foot on the road and moving on again. And yeah, the pace is not going fast up front, so they're very much bunched together.
Cataneo right at the front, just in front of Kemeneur. There's Quintiato, Edvald Boss and Hoagland. Well, Serra working his way up as well. There's Jonathan Monsalve, pardon me. Battling ride the other day from Edvald Boss and Hoagland. Dumont right on the right-hand side. And we were talking about a minute ago from Agliè Desert. Androni with Emanuele Serra, who, remember, won the King of the Mountains jersey at the Giro d'Italia in 2008. .27. Staying fairly stable for the minute. Quintana on the pedals behind Dario Cataldo, who's at the front there. I should say Adriano Malori, pardon me, getting my Italian time trialist mixed up. Oh, we're getting some bad news from Race Radio. Peter Weining, winner of a stage the other day, has climbed off, and he will no longer be riding the Giro d'Italia. A DNF next to his name, but of course a stage winner. And well, Sean, Orica Green Edge, they've got to make sure they get some riders to the finish, haven't they? Just
yes.
1, 2, 3 riders, 4 riders left on the road now for them.
Yes, you know, it's really difficult for them with crashes, and I think Weining as well. He was suffering. I read, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago.
He's feeling a bit sick, I think, wasn't
yes, he was. He had a problem as well. So they've really been through the mill from that point. You know, with the crashes, they had such a unlucky starting out so well. Really lucky with the draw for the team time trial in Belfast. Weather conditions was on their side, and then having a fabulous, you know, winning the time trial and having Pink Jersey winning a stage with Michael Matthews. But they've also had a lot of, you know, bad luck, as many other teams have had. So those teams have had bad luck, and they haven't had really any success in the race. But it's really difficult for Orica Green Edge, you know, down a lot of riders at this moment, and still a lot of difficult racing to come.
We're also hearing that it might be an even worse Giro for Team Sky than we imagined, because there's a rumour going around. We're waiting to get confirmation from Race Radio that Konstantin Svitsov has also climbed off as a result of the crash. And we thought that it might be possible, because he really did seem to be struggling from the crash images we saw, with a couple of teammates waiting for him, checking out with the collarbone being checked out, and it sounds as though, not 100% yet, but it sounds as though that I'm afraid he may well have climbed off as well. So not a good day so far for Team Sky.
No, well, we see there he was sitting on the road for a long time, and you know, the team, there was 3 teammates there trying to get him back on his bike, and we see Bernie Eisel there, you know, just also stopped up, and he didn't look comfortable for a while, but then we did see on the latter shots we had, he got up and looked like he was getting back on his bike. But that will be, you know, another one, a bit of bad luck for them, because if he's badly injured, if through what we're hearing that he goes out of the race, well, it's going to be a big knock for Sky.
People perhaps wondering why it's happening now. Well, the road's going uphill, and if you're suffering, Sean, this is where you really get found out, isn't it?
Well, if you have an injury, if you damage your shoulder or damage any real bang off the road, well, when you start going uphill, if you know, suffering before the climb, but when you hit the climb, then if you get a bash in the ribs, for example, you're breathing, you cannot. And with the percentage we've got here, even though it's going at an easier pace, it's impossible to continue on.
Impossible for the moment. Alessandro Petacchi is continuing on the right-hand side. He is doing a sterling job at the minute for Omega Pharma Quick-Step. The road really going uphill now. Still continues to do so for the breakaway on the left-hand side, right in the middle. One of the most talented climbers of the lot, Monsalve, Venezuelan. Just one of 3 Venezuelans in the Giro. We saw Jackson Rodriguez having a 2nd place for them yesterday. There's Santa Romita, the Italian champion, on the right-hand side of your picture as well. Also hearing on Race Radio that, as we get confirmation of Peter Weining's retirement, that the first kilometre of descent here, after the top of the Alpe Novel, is quite dangerous. And riders' teams are being warned about that and to take care on the way down. I hope that everybody does heed those instructions. No need to take any risks yet. Long way out from the finish. Confirmation that Svitsov has gone then for Sky as well. Retired, really bad news for them, because he was the only guy within any sort of earshot of the general classification. Yes, he was 18th at 7 minutes and 31. Nowhere near as strong as this man, Pozzovivo, who's 2 minutes and 32 down. But Sky definitely are looking at stage wins now. They do have 2 men in the break, Cataldo and Hoagland, but it's not been a Giro to remember for them so far. So Peter Weining and Konstantin Svitsov both climbing off. There's Albert Tima. Jan Shimano lost their best climber the other day as well, with Ludvigsson having the accident in the time trial. Most advanced of the 2 Sky riders there is Hagen on the right top of your picture. Down behind, again in the black and blue, is Dario Cataldo. Was due to be the leader at this Giro, but 39 minutes and 59 seconds down now. 45th in all. Kaiser in the middle for Belkin. Again, jersey unzipped. You have to play the mental battle with yourself at times as well, Sean. It's all about keeping yourself going on these climbs, isn't it?
Yes, and at the moment we can see it's a real steady pace. The gradient is, you know, very severe here, and they're just working away at it, and they're on very, very low gears. We can see they're, you know, they're turning the gear very, very fast. A good cadence on the climb, and when you're going slow, you can afford to do that. And you know, we can see Timmer here is the man who's setting the pace. Normally, he'd not be the one who you'd really expect to be on the front if they were really pushing on. There's a lot of other riders here, a little bit further back in this group, who are better climbers, and so they are just getting up this one at a steadier pace. But with 71k to go and the 8-minute advantage, you know, they have to make the calculation. If they can keep a lot of riders together, get down to the descent, but it's not going to help with a lot of riders here, because you go straight down and then you're on to the next climb of the day. So having a big number of the 21 original breakaway together is not going to be of great help. But it's all about distance, the toughness in the end, I think, as well. They're all concerned about going a bit too hard, pushing too much too early, and then paying the price. And you can see that in the breakaway. They're all just backing off a bit and getting up this one at a steady pace, as is the same back in the peloton.
Well, Pataki and Kaiser have peeled off, as you might expect at this section now. 2 kilometres from the top for the breakaway. Taking over for a Megaformer quick step back in the peloton was Tom de Gent, along with Serge Pauwels as well, and Wout Poels. Guys fighting not just with the gradient, also with the bike, swinging it from side to side, off on the pedals. A real energy sapper. And there's a lot to come after this. "71 kilometres to go." There's a good rhythm out there overall today. It hasn't been lit up on this climb. We didn't exactly expect it. 8 minutes and 24 seconds. The gap is staying more or less stable. There's Valerio Agnoli right at the back for Astana. 21 riders in the break today. A couple have been shed out here. Danilo Hondo was the first to go. Hasn't managed to rejoin the group. There's Cataldo at the back. There's Nicholas Roach as well. 64 is Paolo Longo Borghini. Plenty of Italians in the break today. Marco Frappoti on the left-hand side is another one. Agnoli, of course, aforementioned. On the way today to the Santuario of Oropa. Not the first time that we finished there. First ever finish was back in 1963 with Vito Taccone taking the win. And we waited all the way back to 1993. Massimo Girotto took the win then. Marco Pantani, in his famous overtaking of 49-50 riders, whatever it was, in 1999. Marzio Brosechin also won in 2007. Tom de Gent right on the front. And in Tom de Gent, they've got a pretty deluxe man to control things for a Megaformer quick step. Anybody, Sean, who is questioning the strength of their team needs to look at riders such as Peter Seri, Wout Poels and Serge Pauwels. Yes, they might not have the experience, but they've certainly got the ability.
Yes, they've got the ability, and I think they look that they're in good shape in this race. We've seen them of recent in the time trial. You know, they put up a very strong time trial. That is a good sign that the form is good, and we'll have to see how well they will perform in the bigger mountain stages, bigger than today, because I think they can get through that. But I think they should be able to defend quite well and look after Iran in the really high mountain stages. I don't think there's a team that will be much better and have riders further on than Quickstep. But it depends as well how much you have to use your better climbers early in the stage, and if you have a case like that where there is a difficult one, well then, you know, we could see Thomas de Gent and the ones we're seeing here on the front of the peloton having to do work early. In that case, well then, you know, they're going to pay the price and not going to be with the pink jersey later into the stage.
Danilo Honno's made it back on. Well, you suggested that he would just be going up at his own pace, Sean. You called it right, as ever. And he's there again, right into the back. That's good news for the breakaway. They want to stay as large as possible, surely, to keep their advantage out for as long as possible. 8:14 at the moment. This is Valerio Agnoli. Alpe Novel, almost at the top. Gone through the hardest section there at 16% early on. Road's getting slightly easier, but they're very, very narrow up here as well, with a few potholes around. The group's just going to have to watch and avoid any silly incidents when it comes up to the top here.
Yes, and I don't think it'll be too much of a problem on the way up. We can see there's some potholes, and just passed by one on the left side there, which looked a serious one, and hopefully on the descent and not any of them, because that's where, you know, you could have a problem if you come around a corner. A little bit of speed, you don't have to be going majorly fast, you have to leave it run wide, and if there's a pothole like we've just seen, well, then you could be have a flat very quickly. And also when you're going down, if you have a flat on the front, well, difficult to manage, difficult to control. Surprising that there was a pothole as big as what we've just seen a moment ago.
It's like a London road. Yeah, not good. Not good at all. Hope everybody stays safe. Rigoberto Urán might want it lined out on the way down. Great ride from Patrick Gretsch, who's still up towards the top and at the front of the group. And yes, noted time trialist, good setter up of a sprint train. Not noted too much for his climbing, but he's one of the more slight guys of the powerful lot. Back to the front of the race. Gap goes below 8 minutes for the first time since the gap actually went out. And they're just going to start looking at those King of the Mountains points here. Tim Wellens well positioned right in the middle in the red jersey. Left-hand side we have Manuel Quinziato. Police motorbike in the way. Here we go, 500 metres to go. This is where they have to be a tent for each other. First category climb, a lot of points up for grabs. Tim Wellens, if he cleans up everything today, will be right up there in the fight for the King of the Mountains. He's the best place at the lot here, but Jonathan Monsalve will want stuff as well. The serious climbers will be interested. Emanuele Sella as well, remember. 2008 King of the Mountains on the Giro. This is Frapporti, his teammate at the back. Sella tries to make his way up through the middle of the group. A couple of bottles from Soigneurs. Anything else that might be needed? Big job for all the teams to position themselves and their helpers at the right points on this climb. Frapporti not too interested in the bottle. 300 metres to go. You can see the pace is up now. It's Monsalve who's attacked out the front. And Monsalve's gone along with Wellens. Look, a real mountain sprint here. Wellens is going to take the points. Monsalve behind. Longo Borghini coming up in third place. Fourth over the line was Edvald Boasson-Hagen. Agnoli behind him as well. And we've seen it on both the climbs, Sean. Real will to take the climbs. There's so much racing going on today.
Yes, well, we can see the reason. If you get maximum points today, well then you're really up there in the King of the Mountains classification. And Wellens, impressive. The first climb, I thought he was a little bit, over anxious, but with Monsalve, he is quite fast on the, the final couple of 100 metres uphill. But Wellens winning it and taking maximum points comfortably.
Monsalve, man of his word. He told reporters today that he would be in the break, that he would go for the points. But it's Tim Wellens who takes the maximum lot, and he's right in the fight for the blue jersey today. Everyone, welcome back. 66.9 kilometres to go. That's for the breakaway. The peloton 7 minutes and 43 seconds behind, still climbing. Patrick Gretsch on the left-hand side for Agliè has been setting most of the pace on the front, as has Tom de Gendt right in the centre, wearing the black and white of Omega Pharma Quickstep. Some news to bring you from the top of the climb. 32 points to Tim Wellens, who took those King of the Mountain points for the first over the climb. That means he's now second in the King of the Mountains classification. 45 points for him. He still trails, though, by quite a way. Julian Arredondo in the lead, but he's not in the break, so more points for Wellens today. Could see him move into the blue jersey at the end of it. Thanks to everybody for your tweets. Fashion works. Just asking if Sean Kelly can go around and fit a new bottom bracket for him. Well, he's actually gone to get us a coffee. And then he'll be back on commentary. Great to have you all along. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling. At Rob Hatch TV for any questions to Sean and myself as well. Marathon of Giro coverage today. This is what Saturdays were made for. Sun is shining in Italy. There's some beautiful alpine scenery, and we really do have a race on as well. Certainly with a break at 7 minutes 31. That's the pothole we mentioned just before the break. Quite a big one as well. Thankfully everybody's through it okay, and the more worrying aspect of these little potholes on the way down on the descent. Race radar warning that the first kilometre or two were quite dangerous. They wanted everybody to take extra care down there. Danilo Hondo there, second to last, just in front of Marco Frapporto. He's in the rain jacket already, and the wind gilet, I should say, pardon me. Trying to keep warm and regulate the body temperature on the way down. Climbed up to over 1,000 meters for Alpe Novel. Still to come, though, a very, very long climb and an extremely long descent up to our next climb of the day. On our way to Oropa finally, but the next climb comes to Bielmonte. Begins as soon as we descend here at Cogiola. It's 1,000 meters of climbing to do from that, but it takes its time. It's almost 20 kilometers long. Descent from that as well, almost 30 kilometers long. And a climb to the sanctuary of Oropa, all the way from Biella. Hit the town of Biella for the third time today. Seven minutes and 6 seconds, 64.6 kilometers per hour. Reminder of those in the break for you. Agnoli of Astana, Axel Domon, the young French climber for Asche Desert. Marco Frapporti and Emanuele Sella, two Italian riders from the Italian Pro Continental team, Androni Giocatori. Enrico Battaglin for Bardiani. Haven't seen too much of him, but he's in the breakaway. Kaiser, Quinziato, Cataneo, Polantz, Wellens, Pantano, Longo Borghini, as Mick Rogers hits the front, stage winner on the Giro d'Italia. Taking a couple of bottles very close to the top of this climb alongside his team leader, who's Rafael Majka. Also in the break, Tima, Kemener, Santa Romita, Vermont, Monsalve, Cataldo and Boassenhagen for Sky, who've lost their team leader today, Konstantin Svitsov. Peter Veining also pulling out as well. Danilo Hondo, Nicholas Roach completing the break. So Mick Rogers' turn to set the pace. A lot of people asking what the knee pads are for. Well, a lot of them just protecting injuries and lesions and all sorts of problems that we've had throughout this Giro d'Italia. We've got kinesiology tape as well. Too much torque on the knees and a lot of pain. A few of you asking as well, how did Arredondo miss a break on the day like today? Well, same question as one of the soigneurs, almost sees a big problem for a Team Sky rider. They wouldn't have been particularly popular. Johnny Hoagland coming up towards the back. This is what's happening on the way down. The gap down to 7 minutes and 11 seconds. Perhaps not allowed for a 21-man break to get as much as we expected them to do today. Newspaper, that's the old trick. Nice to see the fans on the side of the road looking after the riders. If you've no wind gilet to get on, you've no time. That's one of the best ways to stop the wind and the sweaty jersey from getting onto the chest and causing a problem and an illness. Coffee's here. Mr. Kelly's back, but I think he's been at the picnic outside. Didn't bring me any back.
Well, it's definitely gone outside. some guys there, a lot of people having the picnic. Of course, salami, I had a taste of it, very nice. Also, the wine was on offer, but I held off on that for later in the day.
That's good. You didn't get a bottle and save it, did you? Barbaresco and Barolo still sitting in the car anyway. 60.4 kilometres to go. 7 minutes and 25 seconds. Just wondering, this gap out to the front, I'm sure they'd have liked it to be a little more before they got on that first climb, wouldn't they? Because it's already down to 7 minutes 24. There's a lot to come. We've got that long second category climb and then the very steep first category climb again.
Yes, they would prefer to have a much greater advantage going into the first category climb, but again, you know, the advantage at the moment with just under the 60 kilometres to go, I think it is looking like it's going to be sufficient. Back in peloton, things are calmed down, nobody really taking it up, and the long climb, the second category climb to Bielmonte, I don't think we should see an attack there normally. I think it will be all under control by the race leaders team. And if it continues on as it has been the set for today, that's, you know, 7.5 minutes. If they go to the anywhere near 5-6 minutes to the final climb, well then it's going to be the stage for the men who's been out of the breakaway all day.
Just less than 60 k's to go. Just getting speeds on this descent. They've been fairly fast. Well, we'll start to climb again fairly quickly. Of course, descent going down to Cordiola, 462 meters above sea level, and it's straight into this climb to Bielmonte, really. A long one, second category climb. And at the minute, after the descent, we still have a few riders still to get back on. We saw Danilo Hondo at the back, who'd lost a bit of the pace on the descent. A couple of the Androni riders were with him. Now, Gianni Savio is not going to be a happy man if both of his riders fail to get back on this now. Certainly Emanuele Sella. Strongest climber of the lot. A couple of riders coming back on now, the giant Shimano rider Albert Tima as well. This is the finish. This is Oropa, Biella, the scene of so many cycling exploits, whatever you think of them down the years. Of course, there's a little bit of controversy there with Marco Pantani. There's 49 riders he crossed after having a mechanical. Won the stage back in 1999. This is the final kilometre. So it looks like today, underneath the trees. We won't see too much of it from the air until we get to this point. A few twists and turns, but the gradient's still going uphill. Plenty of fans on the side of the road, no doubt about that, certainly when we come away from this narrow road. It's the section that's just under 3 k's to go that's the hardest, isn't it, really, Sean?
Yes, certainly in the earlier part of the climb. After about 6 kilometres into the climb, which is the final climb, is 11 kilometres long, so that is where it's really steep gradient. It kicks up to 13% for a short time, and then it's, you know, 9%, 10% for a lot of the time, down to, you know, 5-6%. And looking at that final kilometre, it makes it look so easy because it's going at such a fast rate, and when you look at it, it's 5%, 5.9%, you know, in that final. So it doesn't really give a good description of what it's like there, because it's going so fast. And when you get to the top of this climb, everybody will be on the rivet, as we say, on the limit, and it's going to, you know, hurt all the way to the that final kilometre that we see just there. It doesn't really look as difficult as it is.
News that Damiano Cunego's had a puncture. Back on his bike though, and of course on the descent we've already seen that it's going to be no problem for him. Best time to have it now, really, because it really is going to kick off soon. Certainly we've seen the gap continuing to come down. Now, if it comes down at the rate on this long climb to Bielmonte, that we think it might do. And by the time we begin the final climb, it may not be too much of a gap to speak of. We shall see. All depends on how much will there is behind to get involved, really. Uran is the current leader. We started off in Agliè today. Went through Ivrea, where we have been very, very recently on the Giro d'Italia. La Serra was the first climb. Continuing through Valdegno, Cossato, San Giacomo, Roasio, where we had the feed zone. Could have Acquari the start of the last climb. Up into the Alps for the first time on the Giro, though, to Alpe Novel. Foothills, really, compared to Mont Blanc and all the rest of the big Alps that are around here. Bielmonte is where we're headed. Descent down to Val Mosca, all the way back to Biella, finishing our first big loop of the day. And then that climb. Oropa, just over 1,100 meters. Another first category climb, though, and one with very, very steep roads.